Hello, everybody. This is Jake Sensei, host Jake Gino Podcast with my co-host, the multifamily mentor, the coach, chef, the father, six, the best-selling author, the G-Daddy, Gino Barbaro. Gino, how's it going?
Jake, I'm doing wonderful this morning. You want to know why I'm doing wonderful?
Of course.
I'm coming to Knoxville tomorrow. I'm going to spend the day with you. I'm going to play NBA Jam. I haven't practiced. I know you've practiced. You're going to kick my ass. I get it. But make sure you got your suit and tie on. Oh, maybe not a tie, but we're going to do some videos tomorrow and have a little bit of fun.
I'm taking Houston, Hakeem, and Clyde the Glide. So
I guess I got to take the Knicks. I got to take the Knicks, and I got to take Ewing and Starks.
We're going to line it up. So, hey, we got a very special guest today. Today's guest is a financially free Marine Corps veteran who devotes his free time to helping service members and veterans learn how to build wealth through real estate investing, entrepreneurship, and personal finance. I love some personal finance. Gene, I told you I'm doing The Richest Man in Babylon again. You heard that, right?
It's a great book.
Great book. So, without further ado, David Pere, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. And Jake, I didn't realize you lived in Knoxville.
Oh, man, it's so good. I've been here since 2011, and I just created a life, through real estate, personal finance, like you're saying here, and having a good time beating Gino's ass in NBA Jam.
Yeah, but David, let me jump in real quick. It was really hard for Jake to move down there. People look now and say, "Oh, all this success
easy for me."
and all the one." Well, for you, it's easy, but you're down there by yourself. You moved down there for the first 6 months by yourself. Your fiance was up in New York. You're living in an apartment by yourself. You're basically a Neanderthal because you ain't going out. You're isolated. It's not hard. It's a hard thing to do, to take that step to
Dude,
become.
I started getting really weird. I'll tell you, we got to get into this, but I'll tell you guys, I got so isolated and weird. I'd go to work, I'd listen to audiobooks, business books throughout the day. I'd go to the gym, and then I wouldn't know what to do with myself. So I was watching like Blue Mountain State on Netflix, and then the only thing I had to do is go to the grocery store and eat and work out. So I'd run and all this stuff. I would go to the grocery store and time myself to see how efficient I could get the groceries at the lowest price possible and get out. And I had like all my calories dialed in. I'm like, dude, I'm living like a bleeping robot right now. This is miserable. Thank God my wife ended up coming down and saving me after. But you got to balance yourself out sometimes. So let's hear about Knoxville from David. What you got?
Well, I was gonna say we could do a whole part of the show on talking about moving to because I moved back to Springfield, Missouri, and I was like, I have this huge network and it's not here. So I had to focus on building it, locally. But what I was going to say is we bought a 130 key hotel in Townsend in
cool.
December. And it's cool. It's like 8-building log cabin, whatever, in 25-30 minutes from Knoxville. And it's beautiful, like 2 miles outside the Smokies. And I've probably been out there 4 times in the last 8 months, and I love it.
Dude, we had a company retreat out there a couple of weeks ago. It's beautiful, a beautiful part of the country for sure. Yeah.
Well, next time you do that, let me know. We'll we can hook up a discount.
Dude, let us get a deal. We love deals.
We'll be by February. We should be done with the $3 million reno, so it'll be nice.
Awesome. Well, let's hear about the military a little bit. What that looked like, and you coming out to becoming a military millionaire.
Yeah. Well, the military was, dude, I was a conservative, homeschooled, sheltered kid who grew up in Little Rock, Arkansas. I didn't really want to go to school, didn't have money for school.
Wait, but now you're on a podcast talking to people. I thought you'd be like an isolated weirdo and you didn't know how to speak.
When I tell people I'm homeschooled, that usually blows their mind. Yeah.
We both homeschool our kids. We got 9 homeschooled kids between Gino and myself. So
I think it's a great. I mean, it's like Montessori. It's like it's self-paced. It's everybody. Back
I don't know. Montessori freaked me out. We were in there for 6 months. And I pieced him out of there. So.
That's fair. But I mean, it's like it's self-paced. So like when I was in high school 20 years ago, or in homeschool, whatever. Like it wasn't cool, and I don't know that it's still. It might not be cool, but a lot more people do it now. And
less of a stigma.
Yeah. And so when I went through, everybody's like, oh my God, how is that? I'm like, well, my mom would give me my school for the week. I'd do all of it on Monday, and then I'd go do whatever I wanted the rest of the week. And I worked like a full-time job, and then I did this, and I loved it. And, because it was like I could focus 20 minutes. I could do all my math for the whole week and then spend 4 hours working on English, which I was terrible at.
Can we talk about the school day for a second? Like, so when I was growing up, I got on a school bus. It would take 45 minutes to get to school round trip, right? And I would sit in the back, and of course they hit the bumps, and I'd try to jump the seats or whatever. But I was like taking up smog, and I'd get to school almost like feeling sick because it was like in the back.
Yeah.
Then you'd go to school. It'd be like 8:30. You'd get there, you'd end the day at 2:30, have to stay an hour extra because you're doing sports. Then you get home, it's like 5 something. Then they expect you to do math, eat dinner, and then it's like what the hell is that? And again, 45 minutes to get home or whatever. It was absolutely miserable thinking about it. I did not enjoy any of that shit. And I look at my kids and they're like, they get their nice little meals. They're a little too pampered. I'll be honest. They need to toughen up a little bit, but it's like night and day difference. Holy shit, man.
Well,
So-
and if you're great at math, you go to school and you do, don't pay any attention. You do all your math in like 5-10 minutes. You sit there twiddling your thumbs, wishing the class would end. And if you're terrible at a subject, you don't get enough time for it. So you don't get to it doesn't balance, right? Like in the real world, you're like, wow, I'm really good at this thing. I'm not great at this thing. So I'll do this in 2 minutes and I'll spend the rest of the day doing this, instead of like, it doesn't, there's a lot of benefits to homeschool, and everyone always
and you
comes
get to
back
pick and choose the curriculum.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the biggest piece.
I agree. And then you get to, everyone talks about the social side or the sports side. I played on a USSSA, like baseball team. I played baseball 9 months out of the year. I played rugby for the last 2 years. I played basketball. I played soccer. I didn't really like either of those, but like I played sports, which was good socializing. But then I also, sophomore, junior, senior year, I worked in a coffee shop. There's not a whole lot of better socializing than hanging out at a coffee shop, talking to business guys. And I went to a big church. So like between big church, coffee shop, sports, like it's not like you're hanging out in English class talking to each other. You're not socializing there.
No,
So
my kids will come up to you and punch you in the nuts the first time they meet you. You don't have to worry about there. All right.
Yeah, I think it's I love it. I would homeschool my kid if I could. So
Yeah.
David, how did you get into the military? What made you want to go into the Marines?
yeah, well, like I said, no desire to go to school, no real money, and I didn't care enough in school to work myself towards a scholarship. But I also didn't want to stay in Little Rock, Arkansas. And I'd always liked, firefighter, police, military, whatever. And only one of those gets you a guaranteed ticket out of Arkansas. And I met all of the recruiters. And I think I tell everyone the main reason I chose the Marines is because of the way they carried themselves and the intangibles and the presentation of uniform and all those sexy things that sell Marine Corps. But I think the real reason was, if you look at like the Army, all their bases are middle of the country. The Navy, yeah, they're on the coast, but you're also on ship half the time. The Air Force, you're probably going to be middle of the country, most of your bases. And then they've got some weird ones in like North Dakota, Minnow or whatever that just sucks. But the Marine Corps, 70-80% of our bases are, coastal or island, and you're not going to be stuck on a ship the whole time. So it was just, for me, it was like a much better guarantee that I would end up somewhere I would enjoy. So, I mean, I spent 13 years in, I was stationed in Japan, San Diego. I did do 3 years in Missouri, but that's because I was a recruiter. So Japan, San Diego twice, and Hawaii. None of those I can complain about being paid to live in. And then I also saw 13 countries in that first 4 years, and, including Afghanistan. But, and I loved it. I wanted an adventure, and I wanted something that would set me up for success. And so it was like, well, this pays for school. I'll do 4 years. I'll learn the, basics of being a man and being on my own, being independent. I'll do 4 years. I'll get out and I'll go to school. And I fell in love with it. So I stayed until it wasn't fun anymore. And the reason it wasn't fun was really ironically twofold. One, we stopped being at war, which is not as adventurous because they cut budgets. You don't do as much cool training and you don't go to cool countries as much.
It's not a bad thing.
No, it's a great thing. It's just boring if that's what you're, what happens at that point is the second piece, which is I got promoted really fast. And now I find myself in a, we call it a skiff, which is, if you've ever watched a movie where you have to like put your cell phone in a locker and then buzz through like 4 doors to get into your office and then there's no windows. Real fun place to work. Super great. Everybody's happy because they don't see the sun all day. They don't have their phone. They can't see Gmail. Like, the only thing you can use is your government access to whatever they allow you to, which is no social media, no YouTube, you're like government email, government broken systems, no sunlight, angry people that just want to retire. Great. So you couple that with no cool deployments. And that was right around when I hit financial freedom. And I was like, why the hell would I keep doing this? I'm out.
So in that journey, when did you find real estate? I mean, were you in the Marine Corps and then all of a sudden you're like, you know what, I like this, but maybe I want some more options and maybe I want to retire early. When was that paradigm shift?
Yeah. So I did 13 total. After about 7 is when I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And so it took me 5.5 years to hit financial freedom, and it was 6.5 to be completely, or 6 to be completely out of the military. Just good timing on the enlistments. It wasn't like, it was just good timing as far as that goes. But basically I was on recruiting duty. Dude, it was like 80 hours a week. And I mean, that was average. So there were some pretty terrible weeks. There were also some great weeks because recruiting is very much, hey, if you won and you got your mission, like go fishing. But if you did not get your mission yet, you're not going home. Like we don't care if you have a wife and kids. And so I wasn't enjoying that workload. And I knew that if I left the military right after that, I would have to walk into a W-2 and work a job. And that did not appeal to me. So I started doing some homework on like, how could I replace this income? Ironically, I started looking into Amway, and they handed me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and little did they know
That's the
that would push
pyramid.
me.
Amway's like the pyramid.
Yeah.
What do they call it?
Multi-level marketing, Jake, not
Yep.
pyramid. Multi-level marketing, yes. Not
Yeah,
mainstream media.
MLM. But that's I've heard this from multiple people that the pyramid schemes were pushing Rich Dad Poor Dad hard. For some reason.
Robert has they got him. I don't know if they paid him to write this, but there is a book that he has that is on basically talks about how well MLMs will teach you sales and basic entrepreneurship if you join for the systems. And so Amway was really pushing do real estate or do Rich Dad Poor Dad to then read this next Robert Kiyosaki book, and that would sell you all the way into Amway for sure. And honestly, it was a great strategy, except as soon as I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I was like, oh, houses, and then I found Bigger Pockets. So,
What year was it?
15. I listened to that in probably August, September of 15. I bought my first duplex in December.
David, can you speak to the person who's in a job and maybe has 5 or 6 years to retire, and if they don't, do those 5 or 6 years, they lose a lot of their benefits. I'm sure you were up against this, and a lot of people in the military, and maybe even first responders, they've got to do 20 years, or even teachers, they've got to do 25 years, and they're like, I got to hold on. How did you balance that? What was your thought process? Because you retiring that young, I'm assuming you didn't get a lot of the benefits. What was going through your mind when you made that decision?
No, you're absolutely right. That was one of the biggest arguments I heard from everyone who tried to keep me from leaving the military was you're 7 years away from a pension, which don't get me wrong. The military pension is, it's an extra $3,000-$4,000 a month for the rest of your life, which is great. And fun fact I know you guys are
just
big
go buy a multifamily deal. You can get that quick. You don't got to wait that long.
Well, that's exactly. So, but I will say this though, for anyone who raises capital, because I know you've got a lot of people that listen to your show that do that. If you have retired military, they actually have their pension. You can get them accredited. Now you might have to coach their CPA or whoever through it, but if they do the lifetime or the net present value of their pension, that is enough to hit the $1 million net worth. And most CPAs or people will count them as accredited, which is cool because a lot of people don't know that. And I'm like, yeah, almost every retired military guy is accredited as long as they put in the self-verification of net.
The value of the pension rolls up your net worth pretty nicely,
Dude.
huh?
Oh yeah, it's worth like $2 million depending on when you retire.
Jake, we can stop the podcast right here. That's the nugget. Last week was the student debt. This week is that one.
I'm just confused on that because you have to keep living though, right? It
doesn't.
Yes.
What they do is they basically the net present value is like if you took all the interest and all the additional and all the cost of living adjustments and everything out and you took it as a lump sum today, what would it be worth? And most accountants will count that if you
can you do that
talk them through it. With the new retirement system, yes. With the old one, no. But
if you die though, you're like it stops paying though, right?
Yeah, they just go off average life expectancy, current age, and they do the math.
So you should just take the full lump sum then.
In the newer one, in the new retirement, there are ways to do that. And I would
guarantee it, right? For yourself and your family, and then you can
But it
reinvest
depends. Let's talk about Dave Ramsey and a person's relationship with money. Some people should not take $1 million check. Some people are better off it's like a weekly renter. Why would you pay more by the week as opposed to paying once a month? It's just what your relationship with money is and how the dopamine.
I'd take that money and I'd reinvest it.
Yeah, the three of us would absolutely do that. Most people probably aren't in that spot. I would also say this. If you're, 5 years, 7 years out from a guaranteed pension or quote, guaranteed, as long as you don't do something stupid. If you haven't got yourself set up yet to where your income is at least replaced, I would keep the W-2 because I think W-2 is like the number one hack to financial, like when you're first starting out,
you need revenue before you can create more revenue. Yeah, you can't just I'm going to quit and all of a sudden make it happen. No, you need to be doing double duty. I don't know.
You got to get to that point.
Dude, I think I did like 5 years or something of 2 jobs. Well, actually, my whole life I've been doing two pretty much. But anyways,
When I was like right at break even, right between the two, and my real indicator was I was putting. I didn't even know there was a cap. It caps at like 60 or 70% of your income that you're allowed to put in your 401k in the military, and I didn't know that. And so I was trying to put 100% of my income into my 401k for the last year, and it caps at 60 or 70%, whatever it is. And I was doing that for the last 8 months I was in. I put 70% of my income directly into my 401k.
why were you doing that?
Just because I was like, I want to prove to myself I don't need to live on this. And because I like the TSP, I was like, it's in an index fund. It'll just do its thing, and it's always there as a emergency fund. But that last year, when I was like break even, then it became exactly what you said. It was, well, yeah, I could do this next 7 years, and I'd be guaranteed this, but do I believe that I'm capable of creating that amount of income within the next 7 years without the military? Absolutely. I think I could do it in the next 2 years. I'm working on this 15 to 20 hours a week on weekends. If I had 40, 60, 80 hours a week to work on my own thing, do I think I could replace my income? Well, yeah,
You
absolutely.
needed to prove yourself to overcome the fear. And eventually you're like, this is so
Yeah.
effing obvious. Like, I'm proving myself that I'm doing this. All right, we're out.
But David, it's important to note that you're at the point where you're not enjoying it anymore. Now, if you're enjoying it and you love it, it's one thing. But if you're 7 years out and it's soul sucking, 5 years out, it's going to get worse. 3 years out, it's going to get worse. And not even that, you won't be able to be excited about anything else. You're going to come home as an angry dad. Your whole life. Trust me, I went down this path, and that's why I stuck out with the restaurant when I did my first deal with Jake, when I did our second deal, when we did our third deal. For the first 5 years after I met him, I was able to keep the restaurant. Whatever income was there would support my lifestyle, and all the money that I made with real estate, I reinvested it into the business. That's why the velocity, and I was able to leave within 5 years of meeting Jake and within 3 years of doing our very first deal. It's important that you understand that there is sacrifice, and that's what it is. And it seems like you're 13. You're like, bro, I don't want to do this anymore, but I need a path, and I'm not going to be the irresponsible person that's going to burn the bridges and just jump into the water. I need to actually build the bridge and walk across the bridge. And as I'm walking across onto the other side, I've got the plan. I can do this methodically. Jake, what say you?
Yeah,
brother?
you said, well, I think what you said is very interesting. You said, are you enjoying it? Right. And you were talking about the W-2. If you're enjoying it, keep going. And I think that's it's a very personal question. And so I think what you got to do is ask yourself, what do you actually enjoy? Like, I can answer this for myself. I enjoy winning. I enjoy being good at something. So, I was a personal trainer when I got out of college for a little bit because I like to work out. I hated it. I thought, well, I'm going to, they do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life, I think is bullshit. Everyone's got to ask themselves, like, what do they actually, enjoy doing, right, when it comes to business? And I think the enjoyment comes from the safety of the W-2 and mentally you can't get there, maybe that's a different thing. But I don't know. I think it's something for myself, like, I enjoy winning and being successful. So the entrepreneurship makes sense. I hated the chains of corporate America and not being able to be free and create my own path. But it's a very personal question. So I think it's something that people should look at from those lenses, right? Like, do you like the safety, or do you like creating and winning, right? Not the actual. I like going and rowing the boat every day. I don't think it's that physical sort of going through the motion shit, right?
I will say that had year 13 of my time in the military still been very similar to those first 4 years where I was constantly training, constantly traveling, going to combat, like, exciting, every day is different. And it's like,
That was more enjoyable than being in a cube.
I would have
right?
stuck that out whether I
Yeah.
was financially free or not, because I loved that. But the moment I stopped getting to lead troops into convoys and training and managing a motor pool and developing junior Marines, it was just not.
Did you have
now
a
it's
family
like,
later on?
I did, yeah.
Would that have changed anything in if you swap those two out? Like, you're going into combat now, you got a family, right?
I'm the wrong person to ask. Part of my deciding factor for getting out was actually that I had a wife, a son, and a stepson, and I wanted to make sure that things were a little rocky, and I wanted to come home and really dedicate my time to that. So that was actually one of my kind of points towards leaving the military. And then I found out that there was an affair going on for the last 2 years of that. So when I look back, I'm like, well, that was dumb. I shouldn't have weighed them in at all. So
Well, but not the kids though, right? No, but no, that wasn't dumb though, because the kids matter, right? And so you were doing the right
a ton of
thing.
time with my son. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're out there and you're listening to this, obviously the first step to get into real estate or into any entrepreneurial endeavor is read Rich Dad Poor Dad. If you haven't read it, it's an amazing book. Then I would read Jake's book, Richest Man in Babylon, those two books. But how can somebody get into real estate? How can somebody replicate what you've done as far as your success?
I would agree with both of those. I think Richest Man in Babylon and just understanding the basics of finding. Well, shoot, y'all's book, The Money Soldiers, is very similar from what I'll be honest, I haven't read it. I'm sorry. I actually need to. It's on my stack of books in the living room that grows faster than it shrinks. But it's the same thing, like learning the basics of personal finance, because God, the number of people who get into this game and they make money and then they blow it and they never find that it's like
They didn't read The Richest Man in Babylon.
your own hamster wheel. It's dangerous. I live like I'm broke all the time. I'm always looking at my ops account and I'm like, oh my God, where's my money? Oh yeah, I put $5,000 in that and 50,000 here okay, you know. But to your point, honestly, my favorite way to get into real estate is the house hack. I love the idea of buying a fourplex. You live in one unit, rent the other three out. You live for basically free. And I think that's the single fastest way to hack your trajectory, because you've got to pay to live somewhere. And it's, for most Americans, it's the largest expense, cost of living. And if you can eliminate that, and then the secret being the Rich Dad Poor Dad side, or the Richest Man in Babylon, like reinvest the difference, instead of, like, if you can take 2,000 that you would have been paying on rent and now put it into a fund that you can invest with, like, I think that speeds up your journey to freedom faster than almost any first move you could do. And then I think really it boils down from there, like just doing that. And by the way,
Well, and people
huge,
always need a place to live. They don't need a gadget or doodad. So you're buying an asset that is required to, well, for 99% of people,
and you get the best
functioning
financing
human.
terms. Yeah, everything about that strategy. And the great thing is, by doing that one thing, you'll get incredible debt, especially if you're a vet. You get VA, but otherwise you get FHA, but they're both amazing. And then you get incredible debt, but you're learning about appreciation, depreciation, cash flow, landlord, like all the things that you would want to learn about real estate firsthand, with a much lower risk endeavor than if it was a, out of state property. And then during that time, I would really just figure out, and I think it's more personality based than anything, like what strategy fits you. And I've done almost every kind of buy and hold. I've wholesaled, I've flipped, and I'm like the king of shiny objects. And what I realized is, personality wise, like I'm a much more hands off guy. I shouldn't flip a house. I don't have the details. I hate wholesaling. Too much, constant movement. You have to feed the beast. And I realized, like, okay, buy and hold's the way I want to go. And then within the buy and hold sector, my thing is really like, how can I make a deal happen where I'm not stuck in the day to day? I don't want to spend all my time operating. So I partner with, really solid friends that run the day to day on most of my projects. And I either, there's a bunch of different ways to contribute, but I think from buying that first house hack, it's really just sitting down and figuring out your where do you want to be in 5 years? Because some people really they'd love to scale a wholesaling company and be like, look, I'm busy all the time, but I'm making $2 million a year. And other people are like, give me a Mai Tai and a beach. We put my feet up and just know that the money's going to hit my mailbox. And I think until you know that side of what you want life to look like, you really just need to kind of research and figure out what options are out there, because there's a million ways to make freedom in real estate. But it's easy to get caught up in what's sexy or new or whatever. And it really just boils down to what you want, right? And I think all three of us are probably on the same page as far as like the time freedom being more important than just the money in general.
David, if I'm a military person, I'm in the military, I'm retired, what are some of the limiting beliefs that you've seen people in the military have about not becoming financially free, not getting into real estate?
Well, one of the big ones is there is this just crazy stigma in the military about toys. And I mean, young service members buying freaking Challengers that they have no business buying, and, motorcycles. It's almost like and I was guilty of all this, right? Like I did all of
It's
these
all young
mistakes.
people.
It is. It's young people. And I think there's a stigma of like, well, if combat happens and I die tomorrow, I might as well have fun. So I've got this whole paycheck and I've got your food's covered, your housing's covered, your medical's covered, your dental's covered, your whatever's covered. So everything else is just pure in your pocket fun money. Why not have a motorcycle bigger than I need or a car faster than I should own? And so I think a lot of people just hamstring themselves because when you join the military, you're basically financially free. Any debt you had prior to the military is capped at 6% retroactively per the SCRA Service Member Civil Relief Act. So if you had a 12% credit card, they cut it to 6. Like your financial opportunity is huge. All your stuff is paid for. You've got the single income stream that you
don't need a $600 car payment though.
Of. No, you don't. If you just I tell people all the time, I'm like, look, when you join the military, you're set up for success. You then have the opportunity, and what most people do is to screw your finances up by just buying bad debt. I'm like, as long as you can avoid debt and just put some money away.
And that means car debt, guys. We're speaking directly to you hot rod military dudes out there that are crushing it. $130, $200 a month for a piece of shit that's going to get you from here to there. And hopefully there's maybe that's your debt payment or no debt on it. Save the money, reinvest it in real estate. You're going to thank us later. So.
And Jake, I want to challenge you when you said all young people do this. It's not true because I'm sure your kids aren't going to do it. My kids aren't doing it right now.
Dude, they're living with the G-Dad. What do you expect?
But living with the G-Dad, they could go and buy gadgets and they could go buy a lot of crap, right? Instead, they've got money in their bank account.
Yeah, but dude, living with you versus a absentee father is night and day difference. Okay? That's what we're trying to fill the gap right now, right?
So my point is, fathers and families, the nuclear family, or role models. Choose your role models wisely. That's the thing. I mean, if you're going to go out there and you're going to blow money, you're probably following somebody that did that. So you have the opportunity to go out and find people who have created success. And I think building that foundation is so important. Like Jake said, don't, like you said also that.
And I'm not saying in a bad way, but that's the difference, guys. If you have Gino, as your dad, and he's telling you, well, look at this. If you put your money into this deal, it's going to make you $500 a month. We're going to refi, get the money back. You can repurpose that money into the next deal. Who the hell's having a conversation like that except for your kids? Like 0.001% of kids?
But
so it's a different story.
But I want parents listening to this to have that conversation and not to be afraid of talking about money. Because most parents are shunning their children, or they're protecting their children, or they're sheltering their children, and I get it. But at one point, they're going to become the financial stewards of the money that you've made. And you don't want them to become a Paris Hilton. You want them to become responsible. You want to pass on not only financial legacy, but values and all of that other stuff that goes with legacy. And you have to teach them this stuff. They're not born with it. And this stuff that we're not learning, that's why we homeschool. Because in homeschooling, I'm doing consumer math with my daughter who hates algebra. Why do I need to know algebra? Okay, you don't want algebra? Let's do consumer math. So we're doing compound interest. We're doing bank accounts. We're doing savings and checking. That's more important. So these are the conversations that you need to have with your kids.
Well, my kid's about to get a real education in money because I guess you call this success. It's one of those like quote good problems to have, but boy, did I just get my 23 tax returns and realize I messed something up because I showed way too much income and I owe the IRS $30,000 this year. And I'm like, oh, well, that's a first. I guess that's a good thing. Also, time to really start looking into how to pay my kid to be in my business. Is it
self-employment tax though, or?
It is a lot of stuff. Yeah, it's it's funny because I'm like, did I miss all these K1s? I'm like, no. I just made way too much money last year, which I guess that's a good thing. But yeah, I came out to 180,000 in shown income, and 122 of that was capital gains tax that I couldn't erase, and I tried.
Oh yeah, that's an error on the operator's part right there.
Well, it's actually selling a property and not 1031ing
or having depreciation to back it up, right?
Well, and that's the funny thing. I was like, dude, I had depreciation. And I went back and I'm like, oh, just not enough.
That's
like, crap.
That's what I'm saying.
So now I'm like, yeah, I talked to a CPA immediately and I was like, I can pay my kid $12,500, right? Like for 24, like my kid's getting a paycheck this year. I'm like, he's doing, I don't know, this weekend I'm going to be like, stuff all these boxes for new members. There you go. Merry Christmas. Help me with this project around the house. All right, cool. Landscaping. I'm like, oh, and then I'm going to do, 50% of that to his IRA or whatever the max I can. And then 50% he'll get to keep, but it'll be, well, for one, he probably won't even know it exists for a while, but once he does, it'll be a checking account that he gets $100 in and he gets to spend. And start teaching about budgeting because I'm like, well, shit, I'd rather pay him in taxes than the IRS. So
Before we go to the short answers, David, talk about the mastermind you've created. Yeah, I'm assuming there's a lot of military guys in it.
oh yeah, we don't let anyone in that didn't serve or isn't currently serving, which is kind of cool. It creates a really unique vibe for masterminds. We've actually got some. I'll name drop. One of the guys in my group is, you guys both know him, Sam Lynch, and then I've got a couple other good friends in there. That, I mean, there's quite a few. Yeah, we've got 400 and I think we just crested 415 members, 410. All service members and vets, and it's just I mean, I believe in education and I believe in all of that, but more so I believe in community. So I created, it's a mastermind. It is all of the educational resources you could ever want or need for becoming a military real estate guy. But more importantly, it's accountability, a small group accountability, weekly calls, a place to drop ideas and avoid, huge mistakes. Because I realized, I've paid tons for coaching and masterminds. What a shit. I think I'm going to pay $60,000 this year in that stuff. And it's not the amount of money they make me. It's so hard to look at a return and go, wow, this guy made me this much money in my business. That's so hard to put a number to. But it's very easy to put a number to, man, by putting my attorney on retainer, he saved me $40,000 this year. By asking this guy this single question, I avoided a $30,000 mistake. Boy, if I'd asked that guy how to manage a contractor, I wouldn't have bought this house and I would have saved $40,000 on that flip. And so when I look back, I'm like, it's like one question to a group of people that have your best interest can save you tens of thousands of dollars. And that's what pays for the group.
You're buying their experience. They've been through it. So it's shortening your learning curve.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's all it is. It's a group of service members and vets that have similar goals and will hold each other accountable and call you out on your shit. I love it.
Nice. All right, guys, let's take a quick time out to hear from our sponsor.
Now, we have had a great run in multifamily, going from 0 units to over 250 million in assets. That's over 2,000 apartment deals that we've been able to purchase through our framework: buy right, manage right, and finance right.
Now, Jake and I, we created the Jake and Gino community back in 2015. We launched our first book, Build Our Profits. And since then, our students have closed over 60,000 units. That's over $4 billion in assets they've been able to close over the last 6 years.
And that's why this community has been so successful. We call it results-based education, and we pour back into the community everything that we've learned on our journey from 0 to 2,000 units, and all our systems and scale that we use on our very own property management and investing companies.
Jake, I love that. It's not just education, it's implementation. So what I want you to do, click on that link down below, apply to work with our team, see how we can help you on your journey in multifamily.
All right, we are back. So we've kind of, run a race here around real estate, but we haven't really dove into it much. So I'd just love to hear about your portfolio. I know you said a little bit you started with some, duplexes or quads or whatever, but maybe just run the gamut here on, the evolution of it and what it looked like.
Do you want like a time lapse or just where we're at currently?
Whatever you want to do, man. No BS.
There we go. So I bought a duplex. My second purchase was a 10 unit. That's honestly probably my best deal to date, but I was looking for duplexes and the guy was
10 unit in Missouri.
Yeah. And I bought it. Oh man, you'll love this. I was broke, right? Service member. It took me 1.5 years to save up for that second deal. Finally, when I had 15 grand in the bank account, I was like, I'm going to go find some duplexes. And, Missouri prices, 15 grand will buy you a duplex. And I wrote a bunch of letters and this guy called me and he's like, I don't want to sell it, but I have a 10 unit. I would sell. I'm like, okay, well, so we start running numbers. I got them down from like 250 to 240 to 225. Then during inspection period, I bought it for 212.5. Now this is a war zone property in 2017. So no, that price doesn't exist anymore. But I then got them to cover 10% of the down payment.
You're 21 each door. That's pretty good.
Dude, yeah, it was great. I got this guy to cover 10% of the down payment. And then the bank apparently missed the memo that we dropped from 225 to 212.5. So the bank showed up with 85% loan to value and was like, well, we can either postpone closing for a week or you can get a smaller check. So I ran and got it. I was into this thing for $10,990. I bought it for $212 and sold it for $340 4 years later. And I mean, it was a headache property, but it cash flowed every month I had it. And it was, I had a property manager locally and then I actually did have to show up to that property a couple times because there were issues. There was actually, well, try to say this in the way that doesn't get your video pulled off YouTube. There were a couple times where I may have been brandishing Second Amendment rights while telling tenants to stop badgering my property managers or
Is
get
that
out.
Spanish?
Yeah, I mean, I believe it's Spanish for I had a 12 gauge slung across my back while I introduced myself to a pain in the ass tenant and was like, "Hey, I'm the owner. I heard you're not wanting to pay and you're giving my property manager a hard time. I just thought I'd come introduce myself." And believe it or not, if you're listening to this on audio, I'm not a really tall guy, but I'm 5'8.5", 240-pound Marine Corps powerlifter build with a beard and a 12 gauge slung across my back who spent 13 years in the Marine Corps. You pay rent. And he did. He paid rent, and I never had a problem from him again. I had to do that for 2 different tenants, so I had some time spent at that property, but not a whole lot. I'm okay with that appearance. Like that's kind of a fun day for me. Like my job today is to scare the hell out of a tenant so he pays rent. All right, whatever. What's the worst that happens? It's legal to walk around with this in Missouri, and I'm not threatening anyone. It just happens to be strapped to me visibly.
So you did the 10 unit, you sold that, and then take us from there.
From there, I started wholesaling. I did probably 60 transactions. I kept 16 of those as either burrs or flips, and the other 40, whatever that math is, 44, we just straight wholesaled. And then I got really sick of doing that. I sold that to a friend, the company. And I basically just said, here, take all my data and systems and pay me 10% of whatever you make for the next 3 years. And that was fun, cool little exit. Made a couple $1,000 bucks, probably $10,000 or $15,000 from that for the next couple of years, and then and I got first right of refusal on deals, so I got to buy a few more deals from him. And then in the wholesaling process, I landed a mailer with a single family house, and the guy was like, "Well, I'll sell you everything," and I'm like, "What's everything?" And so from this one guy, we bought a 40 unit hotel that used to be a Comfort Inn, and a 15 unit apartment, a 23 unit apartment, and the single family. And that kind of started my larger interest, right? Like the 10 unit was kind of accidental. This was kind of accidental. And then after that, I was like, I'd much rather do economies of scale. And I realized through those deals and wholesaling that I actually had the ability to raise capital. So did that deal. And then I started getting to a place where a lot of what I do now is I either raise, like bring the money to a deal, whether it's my money or an investor's money, or I put people together. And so a lot like what I own right now, I probably own, let's see, we bought 13 single families in a portfolio earlier this year. I own 3 duplexes and probably 25 houses. And then I own 1 apartment complex that I'm a 50-50 on, a hotel that I'm 50-50 on, a RV park that I basically put the people together and got 10% equity, and I do nothing, which is cool. We actually, closing day is today to sell that, and we're going to sell it for $105K over what we bought it for 18 months ago, and we're selling it on creative terms. So we'll sell it at 10% interest with a 2-year balloon. So, I like that. But I basically just put the money partner with the guy with the deal, and then brought my lending team to the deal and signed on the debt, and they gave me 10%. And then done some raising I probably raised for another 1,000 doors. Most of that's really small potatoes. That was kind of when I was learning how to raise capital. And
so
then
is that the main gig now where you're raising for syndications? Is that kind of the day-to-day now? Or
man, I get asked about that all the time. I really don't enjoy that. I'd much rather be what I would say my main focus on right now is if I can get a small piece of equity for just putting the right people together, whether usually that's not even capital. It's usually like I brought my lender to the deal. My lender can get anything done. I brought an operator. Like we should be going under contract today.
You're a honeybee right now.
Dude, I love this. So today I should be going under contract on a self-storage facility where a friend of mine brought me the deal, and he's willing to carry 20% down. So we'll be 100% leverage, but 0% in it cash flows. I negotiated a 15% or 150K credit at closing so we can do some updates. And then I didn't want to operate it. So I called my friend and I was like, I'll give you 50% of this thing if you run everything. And I'm going to be like a strategist on it. And he will do the management. He'll hire the team. He'll do all the work. He'll have all the contractors. And I will come in. We'll do a meeting once a week where I just fact check everything and go, well, we could make more money here. We could do this. And then I'm off. And so that's what I really love. Like on that deal, I manufactured the capital out of thin air, found the deal, and basically called a friend who was like, you're a great operator, run this. And the other deal, probably the other thing that I'm really fond of is the hotel, like the boutique hotel space right now, getting to travel to. It's like that one in Tennessee I visited 4 times this year and I haven't paid for. I get a free place to stay. And so I took my son out there for a week for vacation, and it was a business write-off, and it didn't cost me anything. And
So are you guys going fancy? Are you doing like purple rooms with Dolly Parton statues, or like what's the theme?
We are going, I think they call it like classic Western. So it's just kind of the buildings.
Who's the marketing group designing this? So like what's behind it, right?
Blake's wife, honestly. So his wife has really got a good eye for design, and well, the place was it was in really good shape, like structurally. It was just cosmetic stuff. It was the guy just kind of didn't update anything. So like when we took it over, we went and visited, and I'm staying in one of the rooms, and I was like, I would pay to stay in this room as is. And he's like, yeah, I know, but we're going to update this, and this. And I'm like, it's going to look really sexy. The biggest thing we did is we're adding a pickleball court, 2 like outdoor grilling pavilions, and a 3rd hot tub. So it has 3 pools and 2 hot tubs. We'll add a 3rd. And then it's got 8 buildings. They're all log cabin
40
with like
units?
green roof. Oh, this one's 130. This is the big one we bought in Tennessee.
And it's got 3 pools with 130 units, huh?
And a 150 person wedding venue.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's cool.
Private pool for the wedding folks.
Yeah, one of the pools is an indoor pool and hot tub, and it's next to 4 I wouldn't call them bridal suites, but like all 4 of the rooms in that building have a jacuzzi in the middle of the room. So it's basically like, yeah, you want a honeymoon suite? Here you go. And we could lock that pool off for those 4 places for sure. Yeah. But that's like the fun thing. It's like, yeah, I did raise capital for that one. And I think I'm a 12.5% owner, but I'm also doing all the social media and the online, like Google business page and stuff like that. I'm good at the marketing side of stuff. So when it comes to a hotel, I can add a lot of value there because it's really easy to drive traffic. Most hotel owners, at least mom and pop, do not understand how to drive online business, online reviews, social media traffic to your website. So I have an advantage there.
Nice. Anything that you've read in the last year or so that you want to recommend to the folks?
Man, I think 10x is easier than 2x. The Dan Sullivan and
Gino, that was given to us a few weeks ago. Did you read it yet?
I have not read it yet.
I guess we need an accountability pod.
I'd say it's nothing that you guys probably don't know, but it just does a really good job of simplifying.
There's a lot we don't know, my friend.
Well, that's fair. But it basically just talks about outsourcing and like how and when and why you would want to outsource to start thinking at a new level. It does a good job breaking it down for scaling.
All right, Gino, are you ready? You going to San Diego? You going to Japan? Where are you taking us?
I'm going to David Pere, young man in Arkansas. He's hanging out. He's homeschooled. He's like, I got no future. I got no job. I got no money. I don't want to go to college. Let me go to the Marines. Goes to the Marines. He loves it. 13 years, 4 countries, balling. And one day he sees himself in a cubicle. He's got no Google. He's got no phone. He's got no vitamin D. He's lost. He's like, I don't want to be here anymore. What's my next step? Well, I've been buying real estate. Let me see if I can get this financial freedom thing down. And then one day he becomes financially free and decides the military's been great. I loved it, but it's time for me to leave. And what's really cool about the whole story and David's journey is there is not any one correct way to make money in real estate. There are so many different ways, from wholesaling to, Jake, wholetailing, whatever that means.
I think he just wholetailed.
Yeah, you're buying boutique hotels, small multifamilies,
Holiday Inn. Say what?
Yeah, son. So I mean, it's an amazing story. And what I'd like to say is, if you're in the military and you want to join a mastermind, check out David's mastermind.
Well said,
Appreciate
G-Dad.
you guys.
Hey, I appreciate you, man. Gang, as always, we believe in buying deals for the long term. Think in decades. I'm Jake. He is the G-Daddy, and we make it happen. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, David.